Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this opportunity. It's not very often you haven't got a diploma behind your name to speak at a forum like this. Nice better not beat about the bush. We're going to get cut off, but our land holding is 35,000 acres. As you said, we run sheep and cattle. The impact so far of coal seam gas on our property as it stands now has been negligible from what I can see. You get the initial pilot project, which is exploratory wells we have put down. They take up a little bit more of the country, but it is once the holes have been established, all that country is rehabilitated, as good as if not better than what it was before. The actual holes themselves are only, well, you'll see by the photographs, they're only 6 by 8 little enclosures around each well, and
that'll do. You haven't got to go on all day.
I was of the opinion that I didn't want area around fenced off that I could not use. So all our stock have access to all that country that has been turned over in roads, around the borders, etc. like that. It is all back to pristine as it was before. The only tracks are the driving tracks around the actual from holes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And our stock grows happily through there.
Okay.
I'll just pass it over to Judy, sorry.
Well, we've got other questions, so...
So we've jumped to the chase. Well, that's good. Thanks, George. That was a good background to start us off.
That was question number 11.
Judy's going to play.
Well, that's the part around, isn't it?
So, Judy, you can answer this next one. This is just another quick background question. So, you're running sheep and cattle. Who normally works on your place? Is it just you and George, or do you have others?
Can't you hear me without this thing?
Just George and myself, and our son and daughter-in-law live there now in our cottage. We also obviously have contract shearers, crutches, the cattle we handle ourselves throughout the year. So yeah, it's big.
Okay, great.
So we've mentioned a little bit about the history of when different companies came on to Glen Aris and you've been working with them. Can you just, either of you or both of you, give us some background on the history of your involvement with coal seam gas on your property? You mentioned when you were first approached, I think it was 1993, and how did that all roll out? Like a bit of a timeline and what it actually meant for you.
In 1993, when we were approached by Enron, the American company, that's really loud, completely different circumstances to what it is now. I mean, they just came and approached you. Would you be interested in coal seam gas? We'd like to drill one pilot well and go from there. I mean, there was the correspondence and the association between Enron and ourselves was completely different to what it is now with AGL and Glen Aris. I mean, in those days, water was pumped from one well and it just went into a creek and ran down the creek. And that happened for numerous years until government stepped in and made the gas companies control the water and put it into evaporating ponds, which I know they don't like calling evaporating ponds, they're holding ponds. That's the sort of the time frame behind it. We went from Enron to Galilee and now we've moved to AGL.
Okay, so before it started, and I mean there's a lot more information and discussion about it in media and elsewhere, how did you feel about this occurring on your property way back in 1993? Judy?
I guess a bit wary. Am I gone?
I think you're right.
I guess a little bit wary, although in those days we were pretty ignorant. We really didn't know what was happening. So yeah, wary, but of course you didn't have the information. You couldn't get the information in those days that you can get now, access to the internet or access to information days. like this that you can get the information from. So we were pretty ignorant, I guess, when in '93 when it all happened. So I don't know.
That's all right. Now, it'll all sort of come out as we go on. So, and I imagine it would have been a fairly new thing then, you know, like out here anyway, at least. Yeah. Whereas now we're all hearing a neighbour has been approached or it's got wells going down. So now, given, you know, those years of experience, you know, is your attitude different? How do you feel now about it all?
Well, Chris, I don't think our attitude's changed. I think we've always had a fairly open attitude towards this sort of thing. I think it's a step forward. I think we have to go with it. We have to try and work with these companies. I don't think our attitude's changed at all. I think the level of interaction between us and both coal seam gas companies, both AGL and Eastern Corp, as it was then, has been far more than we ever had with Enron. And I just think that over the years we've, learned to work with them, and we'll continue to work with them as long as there's someone there, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And I think, in discussions I've had with you before, you've sort of said you've got a fairly pragmatic approach. It's going to happen, so, work with it and, at your peril, don't communicate and liaise, I guess. So just thinking about where you got information, how did you get informed about it when it was rolling out? Where did you get your information from on coal seam gas in terms of, did you read media? Was there any back then? Government websites? And did you get legal advice?
Back then, in '93? Just back in 1993, there was nothing. There was there was nothing, was there? We were told what Enron wanted to tell us, and that's all we had, but virtually. And websites, what are they? I mean...
Yeah, back then.
A bloody computer. So, no, next to no information at all back then in '93. Just went into it very blindly, really. And asked no questions. The water flowed off down the creek and almost made it to the Thompson River.
Yeah. And
we knew nothing.
So these days you get information from where?
Oh, these days, information from the company that's working on our place, which is AGL. All the information you could possibly want. In fact, more information than we really need or want to know. Most of the time we just, okay. They inform us very well. But also, it's not just from AGL. We don't just go along with tunnel vision. This is our land, this is our property, this is our water system. We get information from anywhere and everywhere that we possibly can. And we do that. I mean, it's our livelihood, for goodness sake. And so help me God, one thing wrong, and we'll be onto them as well. We haven't got their blinkers on.
Yeah.
We're not really stupid here. No. We do, ask the hard questions.
Yes.
But they're there. So we have a great working relationship with them. We work with them as much as we possibly can, and they work with us as much as they possibly can. So it works well.
Yep. Okay, I just wanted to ask you about legal advice, because you hear about that these days, landholders seeking legal advice. Did you seek legal advice at any stage, and how did that work? Was the advice good, and did you have to pay for it?
Sorry, George, did you want to have Okay, you can have the next one.
You're right,
we did get legal advice recently when AGL came farmed into Gowing Energy. I keep calling them Eastern Corp, they no longer exist, to Gowing Energy. When they came to put the pilot wells down, the pilot project down, we did get legal advice as far as the agreement went. So yes, it was good advice, we think. We were given the name of a gentleman in Roma who had done a lot of coal seam gas work, so that he could read our agreements and know what he was talking about. So yes, we believe it was good advice, and no, we did not have to pay for it. AGL covered the cost of it. And I think that's pretty typical of under the legislation. Am I right there, Simon or Andrew?
Yeah,
within reasonable amount of compensation is paid. Yep.
there's an issue now with there's an issue now with lawyers getting involved in this, trying to convince people that if their law fees are $1 million, the company has to pay, which is not true. So it's reasonable legal costs.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was to sort of read our agreement and go over it and make sure it was all above board and it was fine. So, yep.
Okay, so just thinking about communication, and it sounds like the communication between yourselves and the current company that you're working with has, escalated a lot. Just, George, mate, can you tell me how you communicate with the company, AGL, between you and them? How do you communicate?
Well, I'm not a computer guy, but my wife does all the computer work. I correspond with Simon on the telephone quite often. I mean, we might spend 10 minutes every 2 or 3 weeks, or, well, it depends if there's an issue coming up.
Meetings, meetings.
So, we correspond quite frequently, and they're very, very beneficial.
We have meetings.
The meetings, we have, he comes probably at least every 6 months to have meetings face-to-face with us at Glenarris, and they explain what's happening in the near future, the next 2 or 3 months, and what their project's going, and what their goals are. Yeah.
So on a day-to-day basis on the property, are you having conversations, or are you just going about your own business?
Oh, no, just mainly every 2 or 3 weeks, as I said, when there's an issue coming up, I speak to Simon, but apart from that, no, you don't. I mean, they're not in our face at all every day, nothing like that at all.
Yeah. So just like you're thinking of, your property and where it's located, whereabouts on your property, like, does the company have to go right through the middle of your property to get there, or is it just in on the edge, or like is it intrusive? Or really not? If I just know on our place, it was on the back paddock, I wouldn't even know it was there.
No, we're quite lucky in that respect. It's about 5 miles from the house, on up our road to our house, where their turn off is. We don't have really any trouble whatsoever with traffic, and that was one of the main issues earlier on with these. We didn't want well close to the house, and we've got that in the agreement where there's got to be so many kilometres from the house, all access roads, etc., nowhere near the station here. So we don't know they're there, put it that way, unless you're riding on the road and the trucks coming in. But as far as our personal life at the house goes, no interaction, not a problem whatsoever. I would also just like to say, at this moment, I mean, the road that they use is as Chris said, is our main road to town. So if for some reason they're operating when there's a lot of moisture around and the road gets cut up, I mean, it's only a phone call away, and they're quite happy to. I've never had any problems whatsoever of getting road touched up. They replaced all our grids, access grids into our property. They were all made for 6-tonne trucks 50 years ago. But once they started rattling over those, you can imagine what happened to the grids. So that was part and parcel of the agreement. Anything that is buggered up, I won't say what I normally say, and they fix it. So hasn't been a problem. I mean, as I said, all grids, I think they've put in 9 grids now up to Glenhouse. Replaced everyone.
Thank you for curbing your language there.
It's unusual, right?
So I just wanted to look at, positives and possible issues. Have there been positives for you? And if so, what have they been in terms of, coexisting with coal seam gas on your property?
Yeah. Well, positives. I can't find... Oh, yes, again. Compensation, I guess, would be the big one. Compensation. Working with them, improve roads, conditions. New grids, yeah. But, I don't know. That's probably... We don't lose anything by it, that's for sure. And what we lose in the small area that we've lost is we get compensated for. So really, there's not much difference, really. And I mean, they... I know there's a few times when Steve, where the son works runs the well down there, and a few times that he's had to come out in a helicopter, he's always brought us out essentials, you know, dropped off, things like rum and run out, you know, where
The essentials.
the essentials.
And I think, you know, George said earlier too about it not impacting on your agricultural production at all. So, how about issues over the years? There must have been some, and I think you've mentioned a few. Can you talk about those? What issues have there been, and how have they been managed, or how could they be managed?
Well, one of the latest ones, it's only a probably minor one, but when they constructed the 11 hectare evaporator pond, it's all security fenced, as you probably don't know. It's all security fenced in line with 2 mil plastic, so it's like a big slippery slide. So, you know, the existing stock in that paddock weren't a problem. But I found if you introduce stock, that was my greatest worry. They smell the water and hang around this fence without, so they can smell the water inside. So I just said to Simon, I've got a problem with the water. He said, well, I'll fix it. We've got a tank and a trough. So next week, the tank and a trough was there. So, I mean, the negatives, yes. No one wants to have people driving all over their property. But, I mean, we've learned to live with it. Compensation, you're saying about compensation, it's also in the agreement. Any stock that are hit on Glen Harris, compensation is paid market price. If it's a beast or a sheep, there's no hassle. If anything's hit or injured, compensation. No problem.
Okay. So what advice would you have for, you know, other landholders who have got notice, or may soon, of, you know, coal seam gas being explored or drilled on their property? What advice would you have?
I think if you're going to have coal seam gas onto your place, I think the biggest thing is negotiate your agreement and do it thoroughly and decide what you want and what they want and work through it. And once you've come to an agreement and signed it, don't let issues build up. You know, if they don't know, they can't fix it. And the experience we've had is if we've got a problem, as George was just saying, similar to the grid, let them know. A couple of weeks ago, they were coming out to monitor our bore, or all the bores, but our bore at the house. It had rained on the weekend prior to that. The main road was closed. Of course, we didn't get any rain, it was just across the road, so per usual. So the main road was closed, so they don't use the main road when the road's closed. So they flew the expert out, whatever he was, with his gear in a helicopter. Simon called me the night before and said that he was coming out. I said, well, we've got a yard full of sheep, so we don't want the helicopter coming in and around the house or over the sheep yards. So they flew down around to the east and came in from the other end, which the boys up at the shed hardly even heard the helicopter. Just communication, you know, just let them know what's happening, when we're shearing, when we're lambing. They try to keep trucks to a minimum because we do have lambing ewes in the paddocks that they're using. Just things like that. Shearing time, they try to, we use the laneway, they go over our laneway during shearing, let them know when we're shearing, you know, so that they know there's could possibly be sheep in the laneway, trucks slow down. It's just communication, and if you're not happy about something, for goodness sake, let them know. I can't speak for every gas company. I can speak from experience that we've had with AGL, and I cannot fault them in that respect whatsoever.
Okay. So I imagine you've been getting, you know, like guinea pigs in a way in the region. I imagine you've been getting quite a few questions from neighbours and other interested sort of people around the place. Just wondered what people have been asking you and what sort of concerns people have got. I mean, we're hearing some and we'll hear some more today, but I just wondered what you were being asked.
Well, most of the time, well, 99.9% of the time, people are worried about water. But also, the question is, what do you get out of it? I get asked that so many times, it doesn't matter. It's the first question most people ask, what do you get out of it? I mean, I could tell you, I could rattle off 50 things I get off AGL, I'm not going to. I mean, that's part and parcel of my life. I mean, the benefit, as far as I can see now, the benefits of having a gas company like AGL, and Jude said we don't speak for other ones, but having AGL on our place is a lot better. I'm a lot better off, put it that way, having them on than not having them on.
Okay, great. Do you get questions about gates at all, being locked out areas or not?
Last lockdown.
Yeah. No? Okay. The last question before I open it up to the forum here, because I'm sure people have questions here, is there anything else that you think it's important for people to know about coexisting with coal seam gas on your property?
Well, I mean, the benefits of them having them there or not having them there, it's up to the person's individual, I suppose, which way they want to think, which way they want to go. I mean, you can fight them for all your heart, but I think in the long run, you're going to be struggling down the track, I think. I know it worries me about water too, but we're always saying they've got to get more information, and the only way that they can get information is by monitoring balls they're putting down.